Yet cared I not what might presage, or withering wreath, or fleeting youth. Love I esteemed more strong than age, and time less innocent than truth. Those are the words of Matthew Prior, a now largely forgotten poet of the 18th century. And that's where we begin. What is he saying? How does this frame our idea for today? Well, his first point in his first words are, yet cared I not what might presage. I didn't care what the things that change in time, the flowers that fade, the temporal life of a human being, his age, those things that change constantly until the flower disappears, the human being dies. Those kind of things did not tell me anything I needed to know. I accepted the transience and the mobility of living things, but beneath that, I saw something more permanent. I saw a truth that abides all changes, and that is at the root of the beautiful flower and at the life or age of a person at any phase of their existence. I saw, the poet says, that there was a truth that survives and that abides all changes. And that truth was what he says really centers my attention, really gives me a foundation for thought. You know, time is not an innocent factor, he says, in the world. It keeps destroying, it keeps moving. It's something that can't be easily measured or understood. The past keeps falling away, and the future is an imaginary thing that doesn't exist. And there is a tiny presence, as Augustine said, there's this tiny presence, which is the factor of the true, the real, and yet it's so infinitesimally small. In eternity, perhaps that presence is permanent, but in our world, that is a constantly changing and moving presence. It's a paradox. And the poet's telling us that he didn't find in his world that time was an innocent factor, but it was guilty of causing all changes, all confusions. And what you had to depend on was a truth that was settled, a kind of constant presence. And this is where we start. He also mentions the word love. Love, he says, is more innocent than time. Love more innocent than change, more innocent. Because love lives in the present. It sees things for what they are. It finds the value of an object truly. It ignores both past and future for a presence that only love can understand. So we often say in God's love, there's only an eternal present, and he sees things for what they are as he created them. And his love is therefore pure, without confusion. And we strive for the same thing. And the poet wants that innocent love, that perfect and complete love, to be the factor of the presence which he's looking for. So that's where we start. Now I'm going to tell a story which may not on the surface of things seem to exemplify the point that Prior was making, but let's give it a try and see what happens. Many years ago, when I lived in New York, I was teaching at NYU, and I met and grew very close to a street person. You know, I hate to give him that category. It sounds like he's a non-person, but he lived outside. He lived on a grade, even upside the NYU's library, even during the coldest months of the year. And he was, you know, fairly desperate. He had a remarkable appearance, even though he was probably in his late 20s or early 30s. He looked twice his age. He had grooves in his face. He had a glass eye, which was very poorly made with lint and dust. And he was a kind of a spectacle, but he was also a person with great energy and friendliness. And he used to come to see me when he came out the door of the building I lived in every day. And he would follow me, and there was a ritual of me giving him $1. Now, it wasn't like a salary or pay. It was just a kind of feeling I had that this was one of the signs of our relationship, that I would give him this $1, and you know, on the days of the week when I worked and when I walked to my office, and it became part of our friendship. Now, somebody might question whether that could be friendship, but that's an interesting question in this context. Aristotle says that ideal friendship is between equals, intellectually or socially. And of course, we were not equals. Intellectually, it's hard to say because I didn't know him well enough in all the years to know exactly how his mind operated, except it seemed to be beleaguered by circumstances. Socially, of course, we were very, very unlike. I was a paid citizen who had a job, and he was surviving by his wits. But an event occurred that has permanently changed my attitude and my understanding of our relationship. And that's the story I want to tell you. He met me outside a bank when I was in Washington Square in New York. And he met me outside a bank. He said to me, "Could you give me $13 and some odd number of cents?" This was very odd because usually I just gave him this dollar. It was a kind of standard. But he said, and he looked very intently into my face and said, I must have this money because I have to see my cousin who died yesterday, was shot and killed, and in Jersey City, and I have to get over there, and the subway and the train and the back, and it's going to cost me this $13 plus. And of course, at first I thought this was odd. This was out of our normal, but he looked so earnest, and so he said to me, my brother should have gone because he knew him better than me, but he's in Rikers and he can't go. Rikers is a city island prison of New York City, and he said, my mother insists that I go because she's not mobile enough and can't, and so I'm the only one, and he was very close to us, my cousin. So it was an obligation, and so I said, okay. So we went to the ATM and I gave him the money, and he went away. And a few days later, he came back. He saw me and he said, "Boss, I got to talk to you." He always called me boss or chief or some term like that. "Boss, I got to talk. We really have to talk." And I said, "Okay, what's wrong?" He said, "I saw in your face when you gave me the money the other day that you thought maybe I was putting one over on you. Now that made sense because usually I would use that money to get something to drink. And you must understand how I operate. You can't trust me. I understand that. I am a boozer, and I got that. But I just couldn't live with the idea that you thought today, and the day you gave me the money, that I was cheating you. I brought you something," he said. And I said, "What? What do you have?" And he gave me a Polaroid photograph from one of those old rollout Polaroid cameras. And on it was a picture of his cousin lying in a casket with a dark navy blue suit. And he said, "Look how good he looked. Look how beautiful he was." And it was something to that. He was a kind of handsome young guy, like 16, 17. And he had a blue suit, and my friend said to me, he never had a suit like that in his whole life, but the city bought it for him for his burial, and isn't that beautiful? And it's touched me very much to think of a life that was enhanced only after death, and to this small degree. And I said to this gentleman, I said, "Thank you." I was kind of shocked, and I looked at the face of this young boy, and it dawned on me after that we had a very particular kind of friendship. And it's why I began with Pryor's words. Really, our friendship had sort of passed outside of time. It had become more real. Death, which is, the thing we're all waiting for with little patience, as Eliot said. Death brings us together. It makes us understand something about ourselves. It's the sacrifice we cannot avoid, and that we fear, and that we don't understand, and that we meditate on. And when I saw this dead boy, it was like a sacrifice or a gift, and somehow it was a bond of truth between me and this poor fellow living on the street. There was something in it of true innocence, and the presencing moment had occurred where there was the cousin, myself, and my friend, and somehow this death, this picture of a moment, this picture of the dead cousin that had brought us into a kind of union of love that has simplicity. And this simplicity, from a spiritual point of view, transcends Aristotle's problem of equality between friends that justifies it. And suddenly I saw in life and death And in the simplicity of the ultimate human circumstance, I saw, I think, the true meaning of friendship. And to this day, I'm beholden to the gentleman and to his cousin for having brought this reality into my mind and having me made so much more aware of the problem of passing things and the permanent relation between those who love.